So you want to get an electric car and all you see everywhere are Tesla Model 3s, but you decide you want something a little more unique and maybe you're not a fan of Tesla's eccentric CEO. Then this could be the electric car for you, the Polestar 2. So you might be asking yourself, as I did, why is this car called Polestar 2? What happened to the Polestar 1? Well, it was a low production run hybrid concept car designed by Volvo. They only made 1,500 of them in left-hand drive and they went out of production earlier this year. So using that to prove the concept, Polestar have returned with this to take on Tesla. Up the front here, we've got some Volvo-style Thor's Hammer LED driving lights, a functional black grille to allow the battery in this car to breathe and stay cool. The Polestar badge here got Citroën just a little bit upset. They said it looked a bit too similar to their badge, but I think it's a really nice classic 1970s sort of design. And this car, being fully optioned, also comes with fog lights. Side on, you can see that this car gets some really nice creases in the bodywork. We've got these giant 20-inch wheels with big spaces in between the spokes, and you can really see those big gold Brembo brakes. The only thing I don't like so much about the design of this car on the side is just this rear quarter area here with the rear window getting a little bit squashed up and it kind of bulging out a little bit. It looks a little bit like a Dodge or something like that. I would have preferred something just a little bit sleeker. But it's at the back here where you can really see that this car is no ordinary compact executive sedan. It actually feels pretty big, and I really like these rear light clusters with the LED that runs the width of the car here. It just looks awesome. Under the powered tailgate is a 405-litre storage space, but it actually feels a little bit bigger than that. You can expand it up to 1,000 litres with the rear seats down, and there are plenty of tie-down spots for your shopping or anything else you might need to keep stable in the back. Underneath the hood we have the frunk, giving you a little bit of additional storage space, but it is also a good place to keep your charging cable and the Polestar tyre repair kit, as this car does not have a spare tyre. But underneath that are two electric motors generating a combined power output of 350 kilowatts. Despite what it says on the side of this car has had a downloadable performance upgrade, unlocking an extra 50 kilowatts and 660 newton meters of torque, shooting you to 100 kilometers per hour in about 4.5 seconds. The battery will last you around about 470 kilometres or so, Polestar claims. In my experience, 400 is probably closer to reality, and you can charge it to 80% in about 35 minutes at a public charging station. It'll take about 8 hours plugged into your wall charger at home. The interior of the Polestar feels a little more familiar and a bit more normal than that of a Tesla's. I mean, it's just more like a regular car. In fact, I think overall the design feels a little more American than Swedish. The materials used on the dashboard are really nice. It's a nice combination of contrasting materials with some softish plastic up on top here. I believe this is a recycled fabric of some kind here in the centre, but we do have some hard, scratchy plastic here in the middle, which has got like a wood print on it, and that extends down here to the centre console as well. There are some scratches on the piano black here in the centre already, and this car's only done 3,000 Ks, which is a little bit sad. The center console screen really does look like someone has just grabbed an old iPad from 2010 and bolted it onto the dashboard, but this is no Apple system. In fact, this is the first car to feature Google's Automotive Services, which is a completely Android-based system, and it works really, really well with Google Maps that look brilliant. The rest of the apps look fantastic. They work really, really well. It uses a nice sans serif style font, which Polestar use all through their marketing material and all over the car, and it looks really good and consistent, as you'd expect with good Swedish design. And in fact, just last night, this car had an over-the-air update using its own internet connection, telling me that there was a new version of the software, 2.2, available to be installed, and that while this was happening, the car would be completely locked up for an hour and a half. I'd be unable to drive it or even open the door while it was updating. So I left that going overnight, came back this morning, and boom, the car has Apple CarPlay now. But unfortunately, it's not wireless. You will need a USB cable to use it, but there are two USB-C inputs here right next to the wireless phone charging underneath the screen. The lower console features probably the most interesting gear shifter I've ever seen in any car. It's actually like a hollowed out kind of lever, it feels like a toy. But interestingly, there is no operable park brake. The car does that for you automatically when you push the park button. And to make this car go, you don't actually have to push start. There is no starter button. It all happens automatically. You just get in, put your foot on the brake, put the car in drive, and off you go. It's the same when you're parking, push park and get out. There's no head-up display, which is a bit of an omission, I think. I'd really like to see one of those in this car, but the instrument cluster is one of the best looking I've seen in any car. There's full screen Google Maps, and honestly, they look better than Audi's, and that's saying something because these are brilliant. They probably have the highest resolution of any map display I've seen on any car. There's not a lot of configuration available. There's really only 2 display modes, and you can quite easily see your battery level and your speedo, plus you can see how much charge is going into the battery and being taken out of it as you drive. The steering wheel has a really good feel to it with stitching. There's some nice clean buttons on here, but unfortunately they don't have a lot of description as to what they do, so there's a little bit of trial and error involved. It reminds me of the new Jaguar steering wheel. The seats have a very nice sort of cloth composite material on them. I'm not quite sure what this is, but it feels nice. It's very comfortable. There's full electric adjustment. The seats are heated but not ventilated, although that is an option. And both the seats and the steering wheel are heated, but the steering wheel gets really properly hot. Seating position is really good out the front, although the bonnet does kind of drop away a little bit, so you can't see the front corners of the car all that easily. But otherwise out the front it's pretty good, but there isn't great visibility in the blind spots because those sills are so high, and the rear window is tiny. You're not seeing much out of that at all. Headroom is good, and you've got that lovely view through the panoramic sunroof, but it does get a little bit low just here, and wouldn't be hard to bang your head on that. I mean, it's soft, but not ideal. Perhaps somewhat inappropriately, I did watch Austin Powers Goldmember with my kids last night, and it did remind me of the gold seatbelts you can find here in the Polestar 2. Back of the Polestar 2 is a little bit tighter than I thought it would be. I'm 190 centimeters tall and I'm behind my own sitting position, and my knees are well into the seat in front of me. There's a plastic shield here which makes it actually a little bit more uncomfortable, and there's not a lot of toe room either. Plus almost no headroom for me, although the view through the panoramic sunroof looks pretty good. There's a couple of air vents back here for the air conditioning. The outboard seats are heated, and there's 2 USB-C outputs, plus we've got a armrest with cup holders and more gold seat belts. So the back seat of the Polestar 2 is fine for a short trip, but you would not want to do a long road trip in the back of this unless you're a fair bit shorter than I am. Driving the Polestar 2 is a really good experience. It feels very comfortable and familiar and intuitive. The steering is nice and direct. You can adjust the amount of heaviness in the steering if you want it a little bit firmer or a little bit lighter. Although the Polestar 2 has been available in Australia for the last several months, I have to say in the week I've had this car, I have not seen another one on the road. I pretty much feel like this is it. But you know what, that's actually not a bad thing, because Tesla Model 3s are everywhere. So much so that people don't even look twice at them anymore. So this car feels unique, and it turns a lot of heads, and the design just feels really, really fresh. I mean, the Model 3 was designed several years ago, and it looks just maybe a little bit dated now. It's due for a refresh perhaps. Whereas the sleek, clean lines of the Polestar 2 really do grab your attention. So I'm in a 50 zone at the moment, but for some reason the car seems to think it's a 40 zone, and it is beeping constantly. And even more annoying than that, it will actually lower the volume of whatever you're listening to on the sound system to beep at you. I can't work out how to turn it off. But having said that, the Harman Kardon sound system that all that noise is coming through is actually pretty good. Now, when you come to a complete stop in traffic in electric cars, if you take your foot off the brake, you're not going to move anywhere, unlike an automatic car which will creep forward. But this car has a creep mode, and it will creep forward for you. It's a shame they haven't come up with a better name than creep mode though, because that's kind of maybe saying something. Another thing I have noticed, well, at least I think this is the case, I can't really tell because I can't be simultaneously inside and outside the car to monitor this, but there doesn't appear to be any fake electric engine noise in this car. Unlike a lot of other electric cars that will sort of put on a science fiction type noise to alert pedestrians that you're nearby, I haven't detected one in this car. I could be wrong. Visibility in this car when you're backing up is not the best because you can see almost nothing out of that tiny little rear window behind you, and the reversing camera defaults to a 360-degree above view, which is fine because you actually can see things, but when you're used to having a reversing camera pointing straight out the back, it is a little bit of an adjustment. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that one pedal driving is the way of the future. It is just so easy to do and it feels perfectly weighted in this car. I don't even need to touch the brake as I'm weaving through these tight streets at the moment and stopping and slowing down for speed humps and cars coming in the other direction. And it's also quite satisfying watching it increase the charge in the battery at the same time. I have to say, the steering wheel heater in this car makes the wheel properly hot. You can adjust it. There are 3 different levels of heat, but in the hottest mode, it's really warm. This particular stretch of freeway I'm on is a noisy one, and it's good to test cars on it to see just how well they perform from a refinement point of view. And I'd have to say, the Polestar 2 is doing really, really well. There's not a lot of cabin noise in here at all. We're just kind of gliding over this bit of coarse road, and there's a little bit of noise, but it's certainly not the noisiest. So that's a big tick in the refinement column for the Polestar 2. 0 to 100 in the Polestar 2 is around about 4.7 seconds, which looks and feels a bit like this. Wow, that 660 Newton meters of torque does give you a good kick in the guts. Look, that's still about 1.5 seconds slower than the fastest Tesla Model 3, but can you really tell the difference? I don't think so. That felt pretty good. So between the Tesla Model 3 and the Polestar 2, which one would I choose? Well, the Tesla Model 3 is a fantastic car, there's no question about that, but it's like a nose. Everyone's got one, and I want something a little more distinctive. And yes, the Tesla can be a little quicker to 100 kilometers per hour, and you can go a little further on a full charge, but I just think that in terms of day-to-day driving, the Polestar is a little bit easier to live with. It's more like a conventional car, if only because there's an instrument cluster right in front of the driver. And Volvo have been building cars for nearly 100 years, so there's no question of this car's build quality. It's flawless. So for those reasons, I think I'd choose the Polestar.